Chapter 42 of the commentary on the book of Genesis. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Dave Harrell. Commentary on the book of Genesis by Matthew Henry. Chapter 42. We had, in the foregoing chapter, the fulfilling of the dreams which Joseph had interpreted. In this and the following chapters, we have the fulfilling of the dreams which Joseph himself had dreamed, that his father's family should do homage to him. The story is very largely and particularly related of what passed between Joseph and his brethren, not only because it is an entertaining story, and probably was much talked of, both among the Israelites and among the Egyptians, but because it is very instructive, and it gave occasion for the removal of Jacob's family into Egypt, on which so many great events afterward depended. We have in this chapter, numeral 1, the humble application of Jacob's sons to Joseph to buy corn, verses 1 through 6. Numeral 2, the fright Joseph put them into for their trial, verses 7 through 20. Numeral 3, the conviction they were now under of their sin concerning Joseph long before, verses 21 through 24. Numeral 4, their return to Canaan with corn, and the great distress their good father was in upon hearing the account of their expedition, verses 25 and following. Jacob sends to Egypt to buy corn, B.C. 1706. Now when Jacob saw that there was corn in Egypt, Jacob said unto his sons, Why do ye look one upon another? And he said, Behold, I have heard that there is corn in Egypt. Get you down thither, and buy for us from thence, that we may live and not die. And Joseph's 10 brethren went down to buy corn in Egypt. But Benjamin, Joseph's brother, Jacob sent not with his brethren, for he said, Lest peradventure mischief befall him. And the sons of Israel came to buy corn among those that came, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. And Joseph was the governor over the land, and he it was that sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brethren came and bowed down themselves before him with their faces to the earth. Though Jacob's sons were all married and had families of their own, yet it should seem they were still incorporated in one society, under the conduct and presidency of their father Jacob. We have here, numeral 1, the orders he gave them to go and buy corn in Egypt, verses 1 and 2. Observe, number 1, the famine was grievous in the land of Canaan. It is observable that all the 3 patriarchs to whom Canaan was the land of promise met with famine in that land, which was not only to try their faith, whether they could trust God though he should slay them, though he should starve them, but to teach them to seek the better country, that is, the heavenly. Hebrews 11, verses 14 and 16. We have need of something to wean us from this world and make us long for a better. Number 2, still, when there was famine in Canaan, there was corn in Egypt. Thus Providence orders it, that one place should be a succor and a supply to another, for we are all brethren. The Egyptians, the seed of accursed Ham, have plenty, when God blessed Israel want. Thus God, in dispensing common favors, often crosses hands. Yet observe, the plenty Egypt now had was owing, under God, to Joseph's prudence and care. If his brethren had not sold him into Egypt, but respected him according to his merits, who knows but he might have done the same thing for Jacob's family, which now he had done for Pharaoh, and the Egyptians might then have come to them to buy corn. But those who drive away from among them wise and good men know not what they do. Number 3, Jacob saw that there was corn in Egypt. He saw the corn that his neighbors had bought there and brought home. It is a spur to exertion to see whether supplies are to be had, and to see others supplied. Shall others get food for their souls, and shall we starve while it is to be had? Number 4, he reproved his sons for delaying to provide corn for their families. Why do you look one upon another? Note, when we are in trouble and want, it is folly for us to stand looking upon one another. That is, to stand desponding and despairing, as if there were no hope, no help, to stand disputing either which shall have the honor of going first, or which shall have the safety of coming last, to stand deliberating and debating what we shall do, and doing nothing, to stand dreaming under a spirit of slumber, as if we had nothing to do, and to stand delaying, as if we had time at command. Let it never be said, we left that to be done tomorrow, which we could as well have done today. Number 5, he quickened them to go to Egypt. Get you down thither. Masters of families must not only pray for daily bread for their families and food convenient, but must lay out themselves with care and industry to provide it. Numeral 2, their obedience to these orders. Verse 3, they went down to buy corn. They did not send their servants, but very prudently went themselves, to lay out their own money. Let none think themselves too great nor too good to take pains. Masters of families should see with their own eyes, and take heed of leaving too much to servants. Only Benjamin went not with them, for he was his father's darling. To Egypt they came, among others, and having a considerable cargo of corn to buy, they were brought before Joseph himself, who probably expected they would come, and according to the laws of courtesy, they bowed down themselves before him. Verse 6, now their empty sheaves did obeisance to his full one. Compare this with Isaiah 60, verse 14, and Revelation 3:9. Joseph speaks roughly to his brethren. And Joseph saw his brethren, and he knew them, but made himself strange unto them, and spake roughly unto them. And he said unto them, Whence come ye? And they said, From the land of Canaan to buy food. And Joseph knew his brethren, but they knew him not. And Joseph remembered the dreams which he dreamed of them, and said unto them, Ye are spies, to see the nakedness of the land ye are come. And they said unto him, Nay, my lord, but to buy food are thy servants come. We are all one man's sons. We are true men. Thy servants are no spies. And he said unto them, Nay, but to see the nakedness of the land ye are come. And they said, Thy servants are 12 brethren, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is not. And Joseph said unto them, That is it that I spake unto you, saying, Ye are spies. Hereby ye shall be proved. By the life of Pharaoh ye shall not go forth hence, except your youngest brother come hither. Send one of you, and let him fetch your brother. And ye shall be kept in prison, that your words may be proved, whether there be any truth in you. Or else, by the life of Pharaoh, surely ye are spies. And he put them all together in the ward 3 days. And Joseph said unto them the 3rd day, This do and live, for I fear God. If ye be true men, let one of your brethren be bound in the house of your prison. Go ye, carry corn for the famine of your houses. But bring your youngest brother unto me, so shall your words be verified, and ye shall not die. And they did so. We may well wonder that Joseph, during the 20 years that he had now been in Egypt, especially during the last 7 years that he had been in power there, never sent to his father to acquaint him with his circumstances. Nay, it is strange that he who so often went throughout all the land of Egypt, chapter 41, verses 45 and 46, never made an excursion to Canaan to visit his aged father, when he was in the borders of Egypt, that lay next to Canaan. Perhaps it would not have been above 3 or 4 days' journey for him in his chariot. It is a probable conjecture that his whole management of himself in this affair was by special direction from heaven, that the purpose of God concerning Jacob and his family might be accomplished. When Joseph's brethren came, he knew them by many a satisfactory token. But they knew him not, little thinking to find him there. Verse 8. He remembered the dreams. Verse 9. But they had forgotten them. The laying up of God's oracles in our hearts will be of excellent use to us in all our conduct. Joseph had an eye to his dreams, which he knew to be divine, in his carriage toward his brethren, and aimed at the accomplishment of them and the bringing of his brethren to repentance for their former sins, and both these points were gained. Numeral 1. He showed himself very rigorous and harsh with them. The very manner of his speaking, considering the post he was in, was enough to frighten them, for he spoke roughly to them. Verse 7. He charged them with bad designs against the government. Verse 9. Treated them as dangerous persons, saying, "You are spies," and protesting by the life of Pharaoh that they were so. Verse 16. Some make this an oath, others make it no more than a vehement assertivation, like that, "As thy soul liveth." However, it was more than yea, yea, and nay, nay, and therefore came of evil. Note, bad words are soon learned by converse with those that use them, but not no soon unlearned. Joseph, by being much at court, got the courtier's oath. By the life of Pharaoh, perhaps designing hereby to confirm his brethren in their belief that he was an Egyptian and not an Israelite. They knew this was not the language of a son of Abraham. When Peter would prove himself no disciple of Christ, he cursed and swore. Now, why was Joseph thus hard upon his brethren? We may be sure it was not from a spirit of revenge, that he might now trample upon those who had formerly trampled upon him. He was not a man of that temper. But, number 1, it was to enrich his own dreams and complete the accomplishment of them. Number 2, it was to bring them to repentance. Number 3, it was to get out of them an account of the state of their family, which he longed to know. They would have discovered him if he had asked as a friend. Therefore he asks as a judge. Not seeing his brother Benjamin with them, perhaps he began to suspect that they had made away with him too, and therefore gives them occasion to speak of their father and brother. Note, God in his providence sometimes seems harsh with those he loves, and speaks roughly to those for whom he yet has great mercy in store. Numeral 2. They hereupon were very submissive. They spoke to him with all the respect imaginable. "Nay, my Lord," verse 10, a great change since they said, "Behold, this dreamer comes." They very modestly deny the charge. "We are no spies." They tell him their business, that they came to buy food, a justifiable errand, and the same that many strangers came to Egypt upon at this time. They undertake to give a particular account of themselves and their family. Verse 13. And this was what they wanted. Numeral 3. He clapped them all up in prison for 3 days. Verse 17. Thus God deals with the souls he designs for special comfort and honor. He first humbles them and terrifies them and brings them under a spirit of bondage, and then binds up their wounds by the spirit of adoption. Numeral 4. He concluded with them at last that one of them should be left as a hostage, and the rest should go home and fetch Benjamin. It was a very encouraging word he said to them. Verse 18. I fear God, as if he had said, You may assure yourselves that I will do you no wrong. I dare not, for I know that, high as I am, there is one higher than I. Note, with those that fear God, we have reason to expect fair dealing. The fear of God will be a check upon those that are in power, to restrain them from abusing their power to oppression and tyranny. Those that have no one else to stand in awe of ought to stand in awe of their own consciences. See Nehemiah 5, verse 15. So did not I, because of the fear of God. Reflections of Joseph's brethren. And they said one to another, We are verily guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the anguish of his soul when he besought us, and we would not hear him. Therefore is this distress come upon us. And Reuben answered them, saying, Spake I not unto you, saying, Do not sin against the child? And ye would not hear? Therefore, behold, also his blood is required. And they knew not that Joseph understood them, for he spake unto them by an interpreter. And he turned himself about from them and wept, and returned to them again, and communed with them, and took from them Simeon, and bound him before their eyes. Then Joseph commanded to fill their sacks with corn, and to restore every man's money in his sack, and to give them provision for the way. And thus did he unto them. And they laded their asses with the corn, and departed thence. And as one of them opened his sack to give his ass provender in the inn, he espied his money, for behold, it was in his sack's mouth. And he said unto his brethren, My money is restored, and lo, it is even in my sack. And their heart failed them, and they were afraid, saying one to another, What is this that God has done unto us? Here is numeral 1, the penitent reflection Joseph's brethren made upon the wrong they had formerly done to him. Verse 21. They talked the matter over in the Hebrew tongue, not suspecting that Joseph, whom they took for a native of Egypt, understood them, much less that he was the person they spoke of. Number 1, they remembered with regret the barbarous cruelty wherewith they persecuted him. We are verily guilty concerning our brother. We do not read that they said this during their 3 days' imprisonment, but now, when the matter had come to some issue, and they saw themselves still embarrassed, now they began to relent. Perhaps Joseph's mention of the fear of God, verse 18, put them upon consideration and exhorted this reflection. Now see here, subpoint 1, the office of conscience. It is a remembrancer to bring to mind things long since said and done, to show us wherein we have erred, though it was long ago, as the reflection here mentioned was above 20 years after the sin was committed. As time will not wear out the guilt of sin, so it will not blot out the records of conscience. When the guilt of the sin of Joseph's brethren was fresh, they made light of it, and sat down to eat bread. But now, long afterwards, their consciences reminded them of it. Subpoint 2, the benefit of affliction. They often prove the happy and effectual means of awakening conscience and bringing sin to our remembrance. Job 8:26. Subpoint 3, the evil of guilt concerning our brethren, of all their sins, it was this that conscience now reproached them for. Whenever we have think wrong done us, we ought to remember the wrong we have done to others. Ecclesiastes 8, verses 21 and 22. Number 2, Reuben alone remembered with comfort that he had been an advocate for his brother, and had done what he could to prevent the mischief they did him. Verse 22. Spoke I not unto you, saying, Do not sin against the child? Note, subpoint 1, it is an aggravation of any sin that it was committed against admonitions. Subpoint 2, when we come to share with others in their calamities, it will be a comfort to us if we have the testimony of our consciences for us that we did not share with them in their iniquities, but in our places witnessed against them. This shall be our rejoicing in the day of evil, and shall take out the sting. Numeral 2, Joseph's tenderness towards them upon this occasion. He retired from them to weep. Verse 24. Though his reason directed that he should still carry himself as a stranger to them, because they were not as yet humbled enough, yet natural affection could not but work, for he was a man of a tender spirit. This represents the tender mercies of our God towards repenting sinners. See Jeremiah 31:20. Since I spoke against him to do earnestly, remember him still. See Judges 10, verse 16. Numeral 3, the imprisonment of Simeon. Verse 24. He chose him for the hostage, probably because he remembered him to have been his most bitter enemy, or because he observed him now to be least humbled and concerned. He bound him before their eyes to affect them all. Or perhaps it is intimated that, though he bound him with some severity before them, yet afterwards, when they were gone, he took off his bonds. Numeral 4, the dismission of the rest of them. They came for corn, and corn they had. And not only so, but every man had his money restored in his sack's mouth. Thus Christ our Joseph gives out supplies without money and without price. Therefore the poor are invited to buy. Revelation 3, verses 17 and 18. This put them into great consternation. Verse 28. Their heart failed them, and they were afraid, saying one to another, What is this that God hath done to us? Number one, it was really a merciful event, for I hope they had no wrong done to them when they had their money given them back, but a kindness, yet they were thus terrified by it. Note, subpoint 1. Guilty consciences are apt to take good providences in a bad sense, and to put wrong constructions even upon those things that make for them. They flee when none pursues. Subpoint 2. Wealth sometimes brings as much care along with it as want does, and more too. If they had been robbed of their money, they could not have been worse frightened than they were now when they found their money in their sacks. Thus he whose ground brought forth plentifully said, "What shall I do?" Luke 12:17. Number 2, yet in their circumstances it was very amazing. They knew that the Egyptians abhorred a Hebrew, chapter 43, verse 32, and therefore, since they could not expect to receive any kindness from them, they concluded that this was done with a design to pick a quarrel with them, and the rather because the man, the lord of the land, had charged them as spies. Their own consciences also were awake, and their sins set in order before them, and this put them into confusion. Note, subpoint 1. When men's spirits are sinking, everything helps to sink them. Subpoint 2. When the events of providence concerning us are surprising, it is good to inquire what is it that God has done and is doing with us, and to consider the operation of his hands. The report made to Jacob. And they came unto Jacob their father unto the land of Canaan, and told him all that befell unto them, saying, The man, who was the lord of the land, spake roughly to us, and took us for spies of the country. And we said unto him, We are true men, we are no spies. We be 12 brethren, sons of our father. One is not, and the youngest is this day with our father in the land of Canaan. And the man, the lord of the country, said unto us, Hereby shall I know that ye are true men. Leave one of your brethren here with me, and take food for the famine of your households, and be gone. And bring your youngest brother unto me. Then shall I know that ye are no spies, but that ye are true men. So will I deliver you your brother, and ye shall traffic in the land. And it came to pass, as they emptied their sacks, that, behold, every man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when both they and their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. And Jacob their father said unto them, Me ye have bereaved of my children. Joseph is not, and Simeon is not, and ye will take Benjamin away. All these things are against me. And Reuben spake unto his father, saying, Slay my 2 sons, if I bring him not to thee. Deliver him into my hand, and I will bring him to thee again. And he said, My son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is left alone. If mischief befall him by the way in which ye go, then shall ye bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave. Here is number 1, the report which Jacob's sons made to their father of the great distress they had been in Egypt, how they had been suspected and threatened, and obliged to leave Simeon a prisoner there, till they should bring Benjamin with them thither. Who would have thought of this when they left home? When we go abroad, we should consider how many sad accidents that we little think of may befall us before we return home. We know not what a day may bring forth. We ought therefore to be always ready for the worst. Number 2, the deep impression this made upon the good man. The very bundles of money which Joseph returned in kindness to his father frightened him, verse 35, for he concluded it was done with some mischievous design, or perhaps suspected his own sons to have committed some offense, and so to have run themselves into a penalty, which is intimated in what he says, verse 36, Me have you bereaved. He seems to lay the fault upon them, knowing their characters. He feared they had provoked the Egyptians, and perhaps forcibly or fraudulently brought home their money. Jacob is here much out of temper. Subpoint 1. He has very melancholy apprehensions concerning the present state of his family. Joseph is not, and Simeon is not, whereas Joseph was in honor, and Simeon in the way to it. Note, we often perplex ourselves with our own mistakes, even in matters of fact. True griefs may arise from false intelligence and suppositions. 2 Samuel 13, verse 31. Jacob gives up Joseph for gone, and Simeon and Benjamin as being in danger, and he concludes, All these things are against me. It proved otherwise, that all these were for him, were working together for his good and the good of his family. Yet here he thinks them all against him. Note, through our ignorance and mistake and the weakness of our faith, we often apprehend that to be against us which is really for us. We are afflicted in body, estate, name, and relations, and we think all these things are against us, whereas these are really working for us the weight of glory. Subpoint 2. He is at present resolved that Benjamin shall not go down. Reuben will undertake to bring him back in safety, verse 37, not so much as putting in, if the Lord will, nor expecting the common disasters of travelers, but he foolishly bids Jacob slay his 2 sons, which it is likely he was very proud of, if he brought him not back, as if the death of 2 grandsons could satisfy Jacob for the death of a son. No, Jacob's present thoughts are, "My son shall not go down with you." He plainly intimates a distrust of them, remembering that he never saw Joseph since he had been with them. "Therefore Benjamin shall not go with you, by the way in which you go, for you will bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave." Note, it is bad with a family when children conduct themselves so ill that their parents know not how to trust them. End of chapter 42.